Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa is the most famous of the Roman politicians and military leaders of the Second Plan. Endowed with great talents, energy and will, he all his life kept in the shadow of his friend and patron Gaius Julius Caesar Octavian Augustus. It was to Agrippa's genius that he owed his victories in the Civil War, which opened the way to Caesar's rule. Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa was born into a wealthy provincial family, belonging to the horsemen's class. His father's name was Lucius. Mark's older brother, also Lucius, fought on the side of the Pompeians during the Civil War and was captured after the Battle of Tapse in Africa. Young Marcus may have fought on the side of the opposing party in this battle. Through his intercession with Caesar, his brother gained his freedom. Marcus definitely took part in Caesar's Spanish campaign against Pompey's sons and fought at the Battle of Munda. Having attracted the attention of the dictator, he was sent with his young nephew Gaius Octavius to Apollonia in Illyria to complete his education. Their acquaintance had occurred even earlier, most likely during their schooling in Rome. The two young men were of the same age, and down to the very end of their lives they were both bound together by the most devoted friendship. After 4 months of staying friends in Apollonia in Illyria came news of the murder of Caesar and his adoption of Octavius, who was henceforth called Gaius Julius Caesar Octavianus. Thus, the young man became not only the heir to the property of the dictator, but also the main continuer of his work. He faced a difficult choice, the result of which was to determine his entire life. Mother and stepfather advised Octavian to refuse adoption. Friends, on the contrary, suggested that he turn to the legions standing in Apollonia and lead them to Italy. Octavian chose something third, traveling to Rome accompanied by a small retinue that also included Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa. In Rome, Octavian declared his acceptance of Caesar's name and legacy, and arranged a distribution of money on his behalf to gain support from the veterans. Octavian soon managed to gather some of the dictator's former associates around him. He also gained the support of the Senate, which hoped to use his name in the inevitable struggle with Mark Antony. Both sides waged desperate intrigues against each other in order to attract as many supporters as possible to their side. Agrippa played an important role in these events. Thanks to his efforts, 2 legions of veterans, leaving Antony, came over to Octavian's side. The conflict reached such a degree of acuteness that it led to a resumption of hostilities. Mark Antony, supported by the 4 legions he had, besieged the governor of Cisalpine Gaul, Decimus Brutus, at Mutina. He was opposed early on by Octavian and his supporters from among Caesar's veterans and the consul Aulus Hirtius with 2 legions. The hostilities were fought with varying success. Finally, at the walls of Mutina a general battle took place, in which Antony was defeated. With the remnants of his troops he fled to Marcus Aemilius Lepidus, governor of Narbonne, Gaul. Antony's defeat had unforeseen consequences. Consul Hirtius, who commanded the Senate troops, was killed in battle. A few days earlier, another consul, Bibius Pansa, died of wounds, and Octavian was the only master of the situation. He sent a deputation of military men to Rome to compel the Senate to appoint him consul. When this was accomplished, he unexpectedly formed an alliance with his former adversaries Antony and Lepidus, to present a united front against the Senate and the Republicans. This alliance was called the Second Triumvirate and was marked by bloody reprisals against the senators and the upper class of the horsemen. Mass murders, the victims of which were thousands of people, allowed the triumvirs to fill the state treasury with confiscated property of their opponents. The main declared goal of the triumvirs was to fight against Caesar's assassins. The army of Antony and Octavian, consisting of 19 legions, totaling 85,000 infantry and 13,000 cavalry, landed in the Balkans. Here it was opposed by the army of Gaius Cassius Longinus and Marcus Junius Brutus, also consisting of 19 legions, totaling 80,000 infantry and 20,000 cavalry. The opponents met at Philippi in Macedonia. The first clash took place, ending with an uncertain result. On one flank Brutus turned in flight, standing against him troops Octavian. On the other at the same time Antony captured the camp of Cassius. Cassius himself committed suicide. Soon there was another battle, in which the troops of the Republicans were finally defeated. Brutus committed suicide and the remnants of his troops laid down their arms. Agrippa took part in the Battle of Philippi, and after it was over, he and Octavian returned to Italy, where over the next few years they were to grant land to about 100,000 retired veterans. This could only be done by evicting those to whom they had previously belonged from the territories to be divided. On the ground of land confiscations, a conflict broke out with Antony's brother Lucius, who at that time held the post of consul. He was supported by some of the veterans in Italy, as well as his brother's legions stationed in Gaul. Hostilities broke out. Octavian seized the initiative from the start. His generals Agrippa and Gaius Salvidian Rufus first managed to lock Lucius in Perusia, and then prevented Gaius Asinius Paulian and Publius Ventidius Bassus, who came to his aid, from breaking the blockade. Famine broke out in besieged Perusia. Lucius repeatedly tried to break the siege, each time to no avail. Eventually he laid down his arms, was pardoned, and went to Spain as governor. Many of his cronies, on the other hand, could not count on mercy and paid with their lives. Mark Antony appeared in Italy with his fleet. He managed to land and besiege Brundisium, but Agrippa, sent by Octavian, managed to localize his successes, and moreover, acting as a skilled diplomat, to organize a personal meeting of triumvirs. According to its results in early October in Brundisium was concluded a new agreement on the division of provinces and powers. Octavian acquired Gaul and Spain, and was able to finalize the distribution of lands in Italy. Antony was marrying his sister Octavia and was to begin preparations for a campaign against the Parthians in the east. Agrippa, in recognition of his services, was given the position of city praetor and was to govern the capital in Octavian's absence. Agrippa went as governor to Gaul. Here he suppressed the revolt of the Aquitanians. As the province was troubled by Germanic attacks, Agrippa made a retaliatory invasion across the Rhine. After spending several weeks on the right bank of the river and limiting himself to a show of force, he returned safely to his base. The Euboean tribe, which had appealed to the Romans for help, was moved entirely to the left bank of the Rhine on his orders. Their capital, city of the Euboeans, eventually became the Colonia Agrippina, modern Cologne. While Agrippa was in Gaul, a new threat to the regime came from Sextus Pompey. Until now, he was outside the struggle of parties that tormented Rome. As a concession to the Senate, Antony agreed to appoint him commander of the fleet, but with the emergence of the Second Triumvirate, Pompey was outlawed. He succeeded in capturing Sicily, building a large fleet there and blocking the sea lanes around Italy. Increasing hunger in Rome forced the triumvirs to conclude a treaty with Pompey in Meson. In exchange for the unimpeded supply of food, he was transferred to Sicily, Corsica, Sardinia and Achaia. The mutual failure to fulfill the terms of the Treaty of Messina soon led to a new rupture. Pompey's commander Menedorus, who had passed to Octavian, defeated the Sicilian fleet at the naval battle of Cumae. Octavian, however, failed to build on his initial success and attacked Sicily. First, his fleet was defeated by Pompey in the Battle of Scylla, then most of the surviving ships scattered sea storm. On his return from Gaul, Agrippa received the post of consul and led the preparation for a new offensive in Sicily. By his order in Messina was built a new naval base with a closed parking lot, reliably protected from the attack of ships Pompey. The new fleet built under his supervision consisted of large and heavy ships with 4 and 5 rows of oars, capable of carrying a lot of soldiers and resist the blows of light pirate ships. Day and night the crews of the ships exercised themselves in the maritime arts. The attack on Sicily resumed. This time it was conducted on 2 fronts at once. Soon there was a sea battle at Milla, during which Pompey, who lost 30 ships, was forced to retreat. Octavian's legions were then able to land on the island. 2 months later there was a new naval battle at Navlok. As last time, the victory went to Agrippa. The enemy fleet was almost completely destroyed. Realizing that his case is hopeless, Sextus Pompey stopped resisting and fled under the protection of Antony in the east, where he was killed. Soon after the victory over Pompey, Octavian managed to eliminate Lepidus as well. His 11 legions left their commander and went over to Octavian's side, after which Lepidus himself agreed to abdicate and go into exile. Now the only political rival of Octavian remained Antony. Relations between the former allies gradually complicated, not least due to the efforts of their associates, and intrigue fully possessed Antony's Egyptian queen Cleopatra. In the end there was a final rupture. Both consuls and about 300 senators left Rome and went to Antony in the east. Realizing that this time the matter will not be limited to verbal altercations, the rivals began to prepare for a military clash. Agrippa's sudden blow seized Kerkyra and transferred the army to the northern shore of the Gulf of Ambracian against the positions of Antony. While he delayed, Agrippa's fleet, standing at Cape Actium, blocked the Egyptian ships in the bay. In the summer Agrippa captured Leucadu, Patras and Corinth, defeated fighting on the side of Antony's Corinthian fleet and completely deprived his troops of supplies. Because of the lack of food in the camp of Antony began strife. Some of his people defected to the enemy. In order to break the blockade, Antony chose 170 of the best warships, fully staffed their crews, and in addition planted on them 22,000 selected warriors. The rest of the warships and transports he burned so that they did not bind his actions. With a tailwind his fleet left the Gulf in the direction of the open sea. Agrippa's ships engaged in battle, attacking the vanguard and one of his flanks. Antony himself with 60 ships managed to break through and take a course for Egypt. Those who remained defended desperately for several hours. The bulk of the ships were destroyed by fire and battering rams, the rest surrendered. Antony's commanders, learning of his escape, stopped the battle. The next day the army, not hearing from their commander, laid down their arms. The Roman armies invaded Egypt and approached Alexandria. Seeing his cause lost, Antony committed suicide. With his death, the era of civil wars ended and Egypt was turned into a Roman province. While Octavian was in the east, Agrippa administered Italy and Rome on his behalf. He shared the last of his 3 consulships with Octavian. Together they conducted a census of Italy's population, greatly reduced by decades of civil wars. Agrippa played an extremely important role in the organization of the political regime of the Principate. His closeness to Octavian only strengthened in later years. He even gave Agrippa his niece Marcellus after the death of his first wife, Pomponia. In fact, during these years Agrippa became the second man in the state. During the crisis, seriously ill Octavian gave him his signet ring, thus recognizing Agrippa as his heir. This fact caused jealousy of Octavian's nephew, the son of his own sister Marcus Claudius Marcellus. Agrippa, who did not get along with him, left Rome and went on a diplomatic trip to the east. Formally, he was appointed governor of Syria, but he sent a legate to govern the province, while he remained in voluntary exile in Mytilene on Lesbos for the next 2 years. When Marcellus died suddenly and Octavian again attracted Agrippa to him, summoning him first to Sicily and then to Rome. By his orders Agrippa divorced his wife and was to marry Marcellus' widow, the emperor's daughter Julia. What followed was a resumption of their activities together. Agrippa governed Gaul, where he quelled riots, adjusted the taxation system, and undertook major road construction. Another year later he went to Spain, where a revolt broke out shortly before the pacified Cantabrian rebellion. The war cost the Roman army huge losses and ended only with the destruction of almost all those capable of bearing arms. Agrippa then received the proconsular imperium and tribunal powers, effectively becoming on a par with Octavian. He went again to the east, where for 3 years he inspected the provinces and kingdoms dependent on Rome, and brought out veteran colonies. He undertook an attack on the kingdom of Bosporus, the throne of which was given to the Roman protégé Polemon. Agrippa's last venture was the conquest of Pannonia. He personally led a group of troops operating against the Scordici on the Sava River and achieved significant successes here. Having undermined his health here, he returned to Italy the following year, where he soon died. Agrippa was honored with a brilliant funeral and was buried in the mausoleum of Augustus. Agrippa lived a very turbulent and active life. He played a key role in the victories won by Octavian in the Civil War and after its end continued to be the main pillar of the regime of the Principate created by him. In addition to his military services, Agrippa was known for his civil engineering and patronage of the arts. Under his leadership in Rome were repaired old and built 4 new aqueducts. On the Field of Mars were erected public baths. His most famous construction is the famous Pantheon. Agrippa built libraries and museums in Rome. Also under his supervision in all provinces of the Roman Empire were conducted topographical studies, which resulted in the most complete geographical map of its time. Its bronze image was placed in the portico of the Aemilian Basilica. His works on geography and history are also known.